Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidina mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Kita mengucapkan rasa syukur kepada Allah Subhanahu wa taala pada petang ni kita dapat berada dalam majlis bicara. Ini bicara buku yang ketiga, membahaskan buku tulisan Profesor Zainiy al-attas, Islam the Covenants Fulfill, yang hangat diperkatakan di seluruh dunia ketika ini. Dan saya juga mengucapkan terima kasih kepada semua tetamu yang hadir secara fizikal dan juga secara maya dalam talian. Dalam pertemuan kita yang sebelum ni, kita dapati lebih daripada 4,500 yang bersama-sama mengikuti perbincangan kita. Jadi saya fikir ini satu kesempatan kepada kita untuk sama-sama memeriahkan budaya ilmu. Yang Amat Berhormat Perdana Menteri 3 hari yang lalu telah melancarkan dekad membaca buku di Cyberjaya. Saya berada dalam majlis tersebut dan antara perkara yang kita bincangkan ialah untuk masyarakat kita kembali membaca bahan-bahan yang klasikal. Ya, untuk membaca, sekadar membaca, saya fikir banyak di antara kita telah membaca melalui peranti moden yang ada ni, tapi biasanya pembacaan kepada peranti moden ini tak lebih daripada 2-3 minit span of reading. Maknanya bahan-bahan yang mudah, bahan-bahan yang sensational, yang ada implikasi dari segi konotasi politik ataupun hal-hal yang berkaitan dengan sesuatu yang bersifat cynical. Dan saya fikir majlis seperti ini, walaupun kita mengadakannya di waktu yang sangat tidak strategik dari segi masa pembelajaran, iaitu pada pukul 3 petang hari Sabtu, tetapi alhamdulillah dukungan dan ramai di antara kita yang berhasrat untuk turut serta bersama menyertainya. Okey, pada kali ini kita akan bahaskan buku ini lagi. Ini kali ketiga Profesor Muhammad Zaini Uthman membicarakan buku ini. Dan perlu juga disebutkan dalam majlis syarahan yang diadakan di Universiti Malaya pada hari Sabtu yang lalu, seminggu yang lalu, jumlah peserta pun amat luar biasa, ya 1,200 orang. Sabtu malam Ahad, dan disebabkan oleh kita terpaksa menyewa dewan tersebut, jadi sebahagian daripada yang hadir membayar. Jadi biasanya kalau bayar orang dengar ceramah ni orang tak datang. Ya, alhamdulillah. Dan ada juga tetamu daripada luar negeri yang datang khusus ke Malaysia, ke Kuala Lumpur pada malam tersebut untuk mendengar ceramah oleh Profesor Zainiy al-attas dalam buku ini. Dan kepentingan buku ini sangat penting untuk kita fahami, bukan saja cuba memahami aspek yang dibicarakan, yang dikemukakan dengan sangat tenang bagi saya, tetapi yang penting juga ialah konsep-konsep yang telah kita fahami sebenarnya, tapi dipertegaskan kembali melihat kepada suasana semasa. Jadi saya tanpa mengambil masa yang panjang, menjemput Profesor Muhammad Zaini Uthman untuk give the sharing session with us on this book. Silakan.
Okay, terima kasih Dato Seri, dan terima kasih selagi Datin Seri dan membuka ruang di rumah ni untuk kita sama-sama berkongsi. Of course, I will do the switch language, it'll be easier. First, one of the regular attendees to Professor Zainiy al-attas's talk since the days of his start, by the name of Tuan Haji Salim Tenang, but I know him as Salim Mas because he used to work for Mas. He has nicely prepared what he considers to be notes from each of the important pages from this book. So I have given to some of you. I do not have the facility of a heavy printing, so some of them from Shukri in small print, some of them from Hilmi. But if you want them, I think we can share them nanti online. It's very useful because what he has done is he has taken some of the main points from each of the pages, and this could be a guide if you want to read the book on your own. I've gone through it and I found it quite, I told him, I say to Haji Salim, this will help my presentation, Umar Dato Sri Zaini,
Yeah.
because it's like a skeletal thing, and because he put the page number and the shortened the summary of that particular interesting points that should be concentrated on that page. Of course, this is from his review, but it is, I think it does in a way give the major idea from the particular pages, because sometimes when we want to read the whole thing, it's very difficult. So this is quite useful. I think the last time we stopped at I think we were reading about the definition of Islam, and remember, I was saying Professor Latas sort of attacked the subject by looking at the idea of lafaz, ism, and musamma. So we have, at the very beginning, we have discussed about the lafaz, the name, and the and the object name called man, and it is the one of the main subject for the purposes of this covenant, and that man we divide into two, of course, the prophets and the generality of a human being like us. The second part, which is very important, Professor Latas want to delineate, and the name Islam, because as he mentioned, and I think he did it very well last Saturday night, the misinterpretation of Islam being driven and put in a corner with the idea that Islam is only submission, and forgetting that Islam has another dimension that has to do with peace. That is missing. And I found this quite interesting because yesterday, in preparation for the talk, I checked the book that Professor Latas referred to, by, what's his name, the author? Khalili, thank you. And the word salam, under the word salam, it means peace. Why? Because it says, and this is something that we will look at later on. Why do we say assalamu alaikum? With, if you were to translate it into submission, you see, then it will become wrong. Submission unto you. You see? So this is why Professor Latas was to, because Arabic has a triliteral root, isn't it? You have to go back to the root of anything in terms of Arabic. So one of the fundamental aspects of Islam has to do with peace. It's not submission per se. So, and salam is also one of the name of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. So when we say assalamu alaikum, according to Khalili, it's not only we say peace unto you. What it means, because salam is one of the names of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, it means Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala watches over you. That's new to me. And this is what Allah says, in preparation for this work, he checked Khalil, because very definitive, very definitive lexicography. Now, not many people use them. Unfortunately, people use the normal ones, Kamus al-Muhit, al-Wasit, things like that. So this is why we must go back to the ancient or the classical, so to speak, the authoritative lexicons of the Muslims, and they are written by the great Muslims of the past. And in the same way, in my classes, when I talk about Professor Latas's book, he always begins with the premise that the Quran is the source of knowledge, because knowledge comes from Allah Ta'ala. And that is fundamental. And apparently, I thought, when I teach, because if you look at his book, Islam, the foundation of religion, the concept of religion, the foundation of ethics and morality, he always says, and he always quotes the Quran. And the reason being, he says, from the Muslim point of view, knowledge comes from God. And the best source for knowledge for us is the Quran. Next to it is the Hadith. I never realized how important it is. Because, for somebody who trained in philosophy, we quote Aristotle like, if you quote Aristotle, yes. You quote Plato, yes. You quote Socrates, yes. Just like in physics, you quote Einstein. That means your knowledge is at that level. Just like water engineering, you quote Dato Zaini lah. Otherwise, no way. But we have not seen the authoritativeness of the Quran. And this is something quite unique. And this is why Professor al-Attas gives the definition of knowledge is the arrival of meaning in the soul. And that is in view of the fact that that is the passive part when Allah Ta'ala deposits in the soul. And that, as I said, goes to the qalb. And this is why it says, Zalahu ala qalbika, referring to revelation. Allah Ta'ala reveals it to the heart of the Prophet, not the intellect, not the nafs. See? It goes to the qalb. Because the qalb functions at a higher level, what Prophet says, the organ for spiritual cognition. Now, this is something new. So the organ of spiritual cognition, and that's why when things related to ibadat, we are admonished. Our advice is to make your heart present, your intellect present. In classes, you must have your mind present. But in salah, in ibadat, why? Because that's the organ of reception of spiritual meaning. Now, that is very fascinating. I would recommend you to read this book if you are so inclined. It's very interesting work. This is by Alexander Key, California, in Berkeley. The title is Ma'na, Language Between Gods and the Poets. He discusses exactly what Professor al-Attas discussed about the lafaz, the ism, and the ma'na, the musamma. Each of them will relate to the ma'na, the meaning. You see, if I want to discuss why lafaz is different from ism, from musamma, well, I've demonstrated to you. We have one ism, but the musamma are different. Zaini, same ism, different musamma. But the lafaz is another thing. You see, lafaz like that's the lafaz, betul tak? Because it's an utterance, it has no meaning. But you can interpret that lafaz is lafaz of curiosity, lafaz of anger. So you associate meaning, and this is why people say, even the Quran, we give meaning. No, it is not. And this is why Prophet has defined revelation as a special communication between God and His chosen prophet, without the medium of letters or sound. But when it is communicated to human being, the prophet will reveal it in a new language, in a different way that happens to us, but not revelation. When we are inspired, some artists, when they paint, they say, okay, I give you another example. Composition of music. People got enthralled with the works of Beethoven, Mozart, Vivaldi, Paganini, whatever, They say it's inspirational. And sometimes the music is heavenly. But they've never been to heaven.
Yeah.
When they listen to some voices, angelic voices, they have never seen an angel. Why? Because we associate to something beautiful like that. So we have a sense, but we describe something that we do not know. But prophets, now this is where Prophet in many of his works, let us see, we can accept people of different levels of intelligence. I am physics. My wife, we took the same professors of physics in University of Wisconsin, Blanchard. Then I said to her, I graduated from Blanchard. We went to people who actually taught, quantum dynamics and what have you. And then reading textbooks of Feynman, so the gradation. And suddenly reading theory of relativity of Einstein. So in physics and in sciences, we can admit people of different degrees of intelligence, that they're so genius. Like Einstein, he's known for his thought experiment, that he is to be proven after his time. And now with modern technology, we can prove his ideas. So he saw something. Now that seeing is what I describe knowledge at the lowest level, that is called ilmu. See? He is gifted with that, and he created new formulas. So it's a new language based on some alphanumeric. So the meanings are encapsulated in alphanumeric configuration. Tapi when you show it to scientists, they look at it, oh, beautiful. They don't say it's very scientific. No scientist will say to a formula, very scientific formula, because it is the basics of it. That basic. You look at it, it's understood, but it's beautiful finally. So in the same way, the Quran carries meaning that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala deposited. The highest level of meaning is called wahyu. The lower to that is called hikmah, given to the prophets and some chosen people. Lower to that is called, I say ilham. It is the form of hidayah. And some of it at the lowest level, it becomes knowledge of ethics, right and wrong. فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. And that is why Prophet has been saying all the while, inter-civilizational dialogue can only occur at the level of ethics and morality. Because we cannot discuss about theology. We never will agree, right? And this is why when we look at the definition of religion, it's very important. And we must go back to the definition of whatever it is, to what the earlier scholars said. Here, this is what this scholar, I found it very interesting because he quoted one of the earlier Muslim scholars, and he quoted Ibn Qura, of all people, I found it very interesting. ذكر أهل الأثر أن الله عز وجل لا يصح أن يوصف إلا بما ورد السمع. Allah SWT will not allow you to talk about him unless it is something that is occurred. Dia kata itu sama. Sama means what has been revealed by tradition, by the prophets. And this is what Prophet has done. He goes back to the authority of the prophet. He goes back to the history of the prophet. This is why when he wants to explain about the evolvement of this deen called Islam, he goes back to the history of the prophets. And that's why for some of us, it's quite difficult to follow the story of Yaqub, Ad, Saleh, because these are so foreign to us. We don't grow up with their stories. The Ad, the Samud, the Saleh, we hear in Suratul Fajr, Iramadatil Iman. But we don't know about their history because it has never been, partly because it has to do with, well, this is what you might want to call Quranic archaeology, but we don't have it. They have biblical archaeology. When they go to places like Egypt, I know very well because I was trained in the University of Chicago, Department of Near Eastern Languages and Civilization. Our classes in the basement is just a mini museum. You can find mummies, you can find some of the early artifacts that they brought back from Iraq, from Egypt. These are the people who actually define the field of archaeology. So we need to go back to these people. And because of that, I want to point to you one other book which is very interesting. I got from Nur Inai bookstore,
Arabia.
Ancient Prophets of Arabia. I would recommend you seriously to supplement this in order to get a better appreciation what Prophet is talking about. This Ancient Prophets of Arabia. This is from Nur Inai bookstore. Do you know where Nur Inai bookstore is? You can ask Dr. Hilmi or Shukri. They are based in Plaza Damask. A wonderful book. It's written by Mustafa Al-Badawi, UK publication. I think he was the principal of Muslim College in London, if I'm not mistaken. It's beautifully written in a very good English. And the sources is basically Quran and the book of Hadith and the Athar, Ibn Hibban, Ibn Kathir, and references to the Jewish and Christian sources. You'll find it from the Bible. You find it from, so very interesting. And there are maps of places. So I found it quite fascinating. And one of the aspects that I was looking for, I found it here, according to him, and based on a book by Hilyatu Awliya. Who wrote Hilyatu Awliya? Hilmi, do you remember? Kadang-kadang I remember books, I forget the author. The first prophet, according to this, the first prophet, because it is mentioned in Hilyatu Awliya, which is a biography of Sufis. In the biography of Ibn Dhar, Abu Dhar al-Ghifari, it is mentioned that it is said the first among the prophets to write is Prophet Enoch by the name of Idris. So this is before Noah, right after Adam. Yeah, Adam, Idris, Noah, Saleh. That's fascinating. So this is why I find this book quite fascinating. 200 something ringgit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'll pass it around to see, maybe they want to see it. So as I said, you see, this is the matter when for us Muslims and for scholars like Prof. Al-attas, he would go and use the traditional sources because that's the very source of it. And this is what this book is good at. That there is a special part that talks about the lafaz and the musamma and the ma'na. So you might want to have a look
Yeah.
at it too. All right. Again, about ancient civilization. I got this from a student of Cassis. Religions of the ancient world. Uh, this is a discarded book from a library. This is by Sarah Iles Johnson, general editor. Somebody talked about Harvard. Belknap Press, Harvard University, 2004. If you want to read more about other religions or ancient religions, I have books about the ancient Roman religions, but I think that's too far apart. Right? Just to show you, for those of you who are interested, I mentioned about how Professor Al-attas has sort of he developed some techniques of analysis like the lafaz ism musamma, and we thought it is new, isn't it? But as I said in that book, the ma'na, it is there. And I want to show you what I mentioned last time, that Professor Al-attas has been following the technique of analysis based on what was developed by Al-Ash'ari. And this is the book. For example, this is Irshad Sari, Lisharh Sahih al-Bukhari. And on page 47 here, 46 I should say, below here, this is the discussion. And this is on the bab, the chapter on Wahi. So it says here, واختلف هل اسم عين المسمى. There is a difference of opinion whether ism is the musamma. So the discussion is already as early as Kastalani and as early as Al-Ash'ari. So Professor Al-attas is bringing back the method of analysis as what our scholars of the past has done. So this is why he is one of the great scholars. He's not using modern method. And when he mentioned, I think when he was when he was discussing about language, remember that night? There is a difference between lisan and lugha, and he discusses about it. And this is why in the Quran, if you check, even casual check on your Quran app, you type lisan, you will find lisan, but you never find lugha in the Quran. Bilisan and Arabian. All of it refers to lisan, not the lugha. This is what Prophet Latas was saying. When it comes to the word Allah, for example, Baydawi was mentioning that Allah is a name revealed, not a contraction of ilah and al. Because Prophet was saying, Baydawi explained that if we were to analyze the word, and that falls under lugha. If we were to analyze it, then the root is alif lam ha. And then it is, but Prophet said that is from the analysis of lugha, but the name itself is not derivative of ilah, but it is revealed. Now, revealed in the Quran. And this is why, although the stories about Moses, the stories about Ibrahim, the stories about Noah, although they spoke different languages of their time, but Arabic in the Quran must refer to the name Allah as Allah. Okay? But there were stages, and that's why, for example, Inni ana rabbukumul a'la, I am the high God, things like that. And finally, Prophet discussing Inni ana Allah. He was referring to Musa. Finally, to Musa, I am verily Allah, no one else. You see, so this is why this is something very important for us to realize. And I think Prophet is trying to tell us that The Quran is a very fascinating document that we have not actually looked at it in a very, in a way that we should draw some really important benefit from it. I think for some of us now are really catching the way that Professor Latas analyzed this thing. And this is why I found this book quite fascinating myself. Reading it all the time, because you get something new dimension. So the idea of submission, the word,
Page over.
kalau kita ikut sini 2937, sorry, this is page 4. Page 4. Page 4. The small one, I think you look also at page 4. It should be somewhere. Yeah.
Page 29.
Yeah. Page 29 from the book, because we're going to the Islam bit. The meaning of submission in Islam. It involves occurrence in the heart and the mind, antecedent and consequent states of cognition. Now, this cognition process is referring to, as I said, you must look at his other works, and it refers, when he says cognition, it refers to the higher level of the human soul. There's the rational and the cognitive part. The cognitive part that he's referring to. We don't have the book here, Prolegomena to the Metaphysics of Islam. Can you get it? Maybe? Prolegomena to the Metaphysics of Islam. If you have that book, it is on page 177, the division of the soul. And the highest is the human soul, divided into two, the rational and the cognitive. The cognitive is the one that is more the purview of the qalb. The rational is the purview of the intellect. So when he says here, it is the antecedent and consequent states of cognition bring about the cognition of submission, such as knowledge of God, we must first admit that Allah SWT has identified himself to us. And this is why he talks about Allah SWT, when he gathered the progeny of Adam, the very first instant is Alastu bi Rabbikum. That is the first instant of identifying himself as Lord. And this is why we answer Bala Shahidna, and we testify. And therefore, that is at the level of existence that is only unique to Allah Ta'ala's recognition. We do not know what level, but from what Prophet al-attas mentions here, it is, I surmise, it is at the level of Ayanu Thabita, the permanent archetype, before we obtain the level of manifested existence in the body form like we are now today. But when we are here in this level, we do make tashahud, and that is kalimatu shahada. And this is why it's very important. I remember I said, I asked him once when I visited him, Prof, when we make shahada now, what are we really witnessing? We haven't seen the Prophet. No, we have seen him. When we say Bala Shahidna, we have. That's why we answer, we witness. Bala Shahidna. We witness. All of us answer in unison, So this is what at this level religion is for the purposes of returning back. So that Bala Shahidna, Tashahud is to remind us back of what we have earlier made testimony of. See? It's just like kalau macam Dato Sabirin, you deal with statutory declaration. In court, you better reaffirm, betul tak? Kalau you take back, it's perjury. You can be put in prison for that, So that is why this is, at the religious sense, it becomes fasik, because you recall what you have said earlier, and this is the test. This is why it's the test. That this religion here. So this is why the submission here, it has to do the antecedent, the earlier one, and the consequent states of cognition. The first one was that one. The consequent is here. So that submission is the submission in terms of cult, which is what Prophet al-attas was saying. It has to do with, at-tasdiq bil qalbi wa iqrar bil lisan wal amal bi jawarih. It is the assent with the qalb, and then the declaration with the tongue, and then the act with the organs and the limbs. And that is the proper submission. And page 75 to 79, we're not going to go that far. Professor Latas, make rebuttals on the wrong idea why Islam is not to be translated as merely submission. Right? Now, the word Muslim, of course, is a consequence of the word Aslama. But in the case of earlier prophets, they are submitting to the millah of their prophets. And because of that millah is not yet a full-blown deen. It's not yet a full-blown deen. Why? Because to have a full-blown deen, and Islam is the archetypal of it. Islam is the final form of the deen that is accepted. You have to look at page 40, 39 and 40. What is deen? This is where I left off last time. It is religion revealed by God to his prophet and messengers, not religion that was a product of human intervention. We have experienced today religion that are human made. Give simple point, Scientology. Right? Scientology, the religion of Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
It is, what are the components of a full-blown, complete religion? You must read this, 39 to 40, and we read it together. It is first tradition. Why it has tradition? It has to do with the earlier traditions of earlier prophets, the Aada. And this is why it becomes part of a running rule of thumb for Muslims, that Ada takes over any other thing. That's why Ada can become part of the Sharia. See? So Ada goes back to the original millah of the prophets and the messengers. It is a way of life, meaning it goes back to the seerah of all the prophets. The seerah of all the prophets. Lived in accordance with that tradition. It is law. So in order to have religion, you have tradition, you have to have seerah of prophets. There are traditions, religious traditions, that have no life of their prophets. It has shara, and it has sharia and hukum, the practical application of the moral and legal principles and ordinances of the religion. This is the problem, because in the history of Christianity and Judaism, they didn't get to be a full-blown religion because the part of the Sharia is not there. It is mentioned, likullin shir'atin wa minhaja. They have their own. Tetapi when you look at the Judaism, it's quite a hot issue now. There's no rule about governance. Yeah, it's just rules of eating and that. The Mosaic laws has nothing to do about governing a state. And that is why they're very happy with secular law and secular governing now, the state of Israel. That's why they have to have Zionism. And the proper Israelis or the proper Bani Israel, they will not agree with Zionists today. The same thing with Christianity. In fact, Christianity goes by the dictum, give to Caesar what is due to Caesar. Completely, what is meant for the state. Christianity has no governing laws. That's why Islam has the Sharia. And that's why they're so afraid of Islam. The very first thing anyone would hold against Muslims, Sharia. Because they don't have it. Any other religions. We're not trying to, make fun of them, but this is our difference. We have the Sharia. The main thing, Dato knows very well the problem with our courts. Level of the Sharia now. It is judgment, qada. It is reckoning, hisab, and it is kasab, requital. The idea of iktisab, these are all have to do with kalam, theology later on. It is guidance, huda, along the straight path of Siratul Mustaqim. It is unconditional obedience, ta'ah.
Yeah.
Now, this ta'ah is very interesting, and this has to do with the idea of submission also. Professor Latas discusses at length about this. I remember when I first came back and becoming closer to him at ISTA at the very beginning, One of the things that I learned in his class on religion of Islam, I know Islam, you have to be obedient. I learned something which is quite new to me, and it is tau'an wa karhan. That there is willing submission and that there is unwilling submission. Now, that unwilling submission is new to me. I don't know what it is.
Unwilling submission.
Unwilling submission. The word is karhan.
Karhan.
He said maybe that's the word Melayu, kerah, kena kerah.
Karhan.
Kena kerah buat kerja, tak nak buat kerja. Tapi kena paksa. Kena kerah. So, you do it, but with nothing associated with it. You know, really, this is unwilling rebelliousness. And this is why the other end, the opposite of tawa'an, Rasulullah is the Quranic verse. أَفَغَيْرِ دِينِ اللَّهِ يَبْغُونَ. This is very interesting because the Quran puts it in a way, أَفَغَيْرَ دِينِ الْإِسْلَامِ. Is there another deen? يَبْغُونَ, that they are, you know, the word bagha is very interesting in Arabic. Because bagha ni is the root word for revolution. Maknanya you are revolting against Islam, that you're looking for another religion. That's what it is. أَفَغَيْرَ دِينِ اللَّهِ يَبْغُونَ وَلَهُ أَسْلَمَ مَنْ فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ تَوْءًا وَكَرْهًا. Sedangkan segala yang di bumi, di langit dan bumi telah menyembah Allah SWT tau'an wa karhan. Secara taat, willingly, and unwilling. So the unwilling part, it has to do with what Rasulullah discusses very early beginning. Creation, Allah SWT gave two kinds, meaning creation that has nafsul haya and nafsul natiqah, that has this vital soul and articulate soul, meaning the rational soul. That one will do it taw'an. That, because you can rationally and with tasdiq of the qalb, you submit, and that submission is willing. Although you go through a process of maybe intellectualizing it, you know, going through, finally, it's just like physics. You see the formula, you must submit. Fluid dynamics, you cannot go against it. You go against it, your pipe will burst. It doesn't work. The same thing with electromagnetic. That is the sunnatullah. So in the same way, the taw'an wa karhan, you can intellectually arrive at it, but some people arrived at it cognitively. The antecedent part, they have built in with them, you see. And that is why for some people, they don't need to think about becoming a Muslim, meaning from a previous tradition. They just sort of see it, you know. So this is why Prof. is very interesting. To say it's submission alone as far as Islam is not quite correct, because there is this element of karha. The proper Muslims are the ones who submit willingly. And if you look at the history of earlier prophets, their followers, their peoples, I should say, many of it are the story of karhan. And this is what Prophet mentioned here. Ibrahim alayhi salam had very few followers. Yaqub, Saleh, whatever, they have very few followers. These are the ones that are taw'an. And this is why later on, there's a verse in the Quran referring to, remember Prophet talks about that these earlier prophets, they are Muslim anticipate. They're anticipating to be Muslim. You know, umirtu an akuna minal muslimin. I've been commanded that I become a Muslim. That referring to Noah. So they don't know what is the actual final form of being a Muslim. And like that night, he was saying, remember the Isra Mi'raj, when Rasul Sallallahu became the Imam of all the other prophets. That is an indication that they do not know what the proper submission to God in terms of ibadah. See, it's mentioned here, part of the full-blown religion is the ibadah. So the ibadah of earlier prophets are not entirely complete. Moses, when he approached the burning bush, he was supposed to fakhla'na alayk, take off your shoes. We Muslims take off our shoes before masjid. The other religions don't do that now. They go to the church wearing their shoes. They go to the synagogues wearing their shoes. So if they were to claim that they follow their prophet, they don't. We are the ones, But it does not mean that we pick and choose, our religion developed in history. No, it was revealed. This is what they don't understand, the concept of revealed. You see, they might see commonness, that there are some aspects like, oh, we make tawaf. They were earlier before Islam, the Jahiliyyah, they were tawaf naked. Does that mean we follow them? No, we follow the tawaf of Nabi Ibrahim. But it was the complete form of it is the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That's what it is. Yeah. So let's go on. It is guidance, huda, straight path, siratul mustaqim, unconditional obedience, ta'ah, and humble submissiveness. Inqiyad. It is satisfaction and contentment, jaza. This is quite interesting, spiritual or mental state of being, or a state of historical circumstance. This is hal. Now, this is new. Pasal most people, when we talk about hal, ini Sufi, right? No, it is not. The Sufis give it a technical term, you see, but it is, everybody experiences this hal. This called ahwal wal maqamat. We all experiences this. We all have gone through these stages, but we just don't realize it. The Sufi so happens give it this technical term. In Raniri's Lataiful Asfar, the book that I worked on, there is I think the last chapter, fi ahwal wal maqamat. Ahwal is the plural of hal. For example, when you made a mistake, you committed sin at the high, or the other end of mistake is a sin. You make tawbah. A tawbah is a hal. It's a state. You have achieved a state, you see. And there are many levels. It's been discussed there, So it does not mean that it is the purview of tasawwuf alone. But the Sufis have given it technical terms so that we know our stages, you see. It is serving God with humility and submissiveness in what He approves. That is ibadat. It is the statement of witnessing, kalimah shahada. Any other religion has kalimah shahada? No. This is unique, you see. And this is why Islam is the final complete form, as it is said in the Quran, Al-yawma akmaltu lakum dinakum. Today, I completed for you your religion. Wa atmamtu alaykum nikmati. And I completed to you my blessings, my ni'mah. And then, wa raditu lakumul Islam madina. And I am pleased to accept Islam as a religion before me, you see, or the right form of submission. Kalimah shahada, you see. And this was al-attas. I remember when we visited him, he keep on saying kalimah shahada is very important, Zaini, very important. He didn't realize, but here he's trying to say it is one of the requirement of a full-blown complete religion.
Sebelum ni macam mana dia tu setelah zaman?
They don't have a statement. For example, they beat Musa. They don't say aman to be Musa.
Dia ikut Musa tu
tak ada declaration. In fact, Fir'aun was saying to the magician, qabla an adana lakum hal amantu bi qabla an adana. Did you believe in Musa before I gave you permission? They just submit, because they saw what Moses have done with his staff, and they saw reality as it is, and that's why, and that's cognition, and that's not intellectual observation. Because they saw something real. This is what I said in my class. The magicians of Pharaoh saw something beyond what can be seen by the eye. And this you can see. This you can see for many of us who are trained in equation. When you look at the equation, you see beyond the equation, isn't it? You see the repercussions beyond the equation. This is what's going to happen. You see. So that's what they saw. What other people just seeing things, but the magicians, because they are trained of a certain level, they see something beyond. And this is why Fir'aun was shocked. Pharaoh, did you believe in him before I give you permission to believe? So no, there is no declaration. Not in any other earlier book. They just followers.
Kalau the existing Christian tak ada.
They do
Macam
what
mana?
is called baptism. Baptism.
Dia tak ada.
They will ask, you accept Jesus as your Lord and your Savior. But that's later, to see. That's later in the council. We read about the Council of Nicaea. If you read Gibbon, Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, they'll talk about what happened at the Council of Nicaea, what they decided to become the tenets of a Christian religion. But again, after many years, many decades, they changed it. Yeah.
Okay.
That's what they always say. Do you accept Jesus as your Savior, your Master? That's what it is, but not a declaration. Kita acceptance is like an acquiesce. It's like a tasdiq. Tapi kita ada tasdiq, ikrar, amal. Those three things. And that and there is no true and real God who is the focus of worship but Allah, and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah. It is a trust that God puts in the soul to have faith in Iman. And this is also something new that I learned from Allah. I always thought that Iman is something, it's like, inilah, when I was learning physics, I was introduced something called Planck's constant. I believe like Planck's constant, otherwise my equation doesn't work. I thought belief is like that. No, he explained to me something beautiful. He said, Zaini, Iman is an amana. Allah SWT give it to you. What do you do with it? You have to keep it in safety as an amana, a trust. So you make it grow. Sebab tu kita panggil amanah saham. you better grow. Decrease susah. That's what amanah is. You see, you keep it for it to grow. And then Tuan Haji Effendi, the Malay poet, dia kata, he when Prof al-attas mentioned that to him, he says, kita iman ni kita patut riba dia macam kita riba anak. That's how it is. It is full of love, care, kan? So itu orang sajak lah, orang penyair lah bahasa. So iman is amanah because that's the root word of it also. Alif, mim, nun. But okay, we shouldn't go beyond it. So this amanah is very important. So iman, this is why it is gifted. It is hidayah, and once it is given, we must maintain it and make it grow. So, and this iman has to do with belief in angels, his books, his messenger, the last day, the divine decree of God, good and bad. Qada and qada, khairu wa sharu. It is internal verification. This is now Prophet going deeper. Tasdiq batin in the heart, qalb. It is also prescribed prayers, salah, alms, tax, zakah, fasting, Ramadan, saum, pilgrimage, hajj. It is the external verification. We have internal verification, we have external verification. Tasdiq, zahir by the tongue, lisan, and the bodily members, arkan. It is consciousness of God in the sensitive imagination or in the rational imagination. This is new. You see, you might ask, what is sensitive imagination and rational imagination, right? Okay, I have to explain. A little bit of diversion. We have the spirit, and we have the cult, we have the intellect, we have the nafs, and then we have the world, the external world. The workings of the internal activity of our soul is facilitated by what is called internal faculties. The internal faculties are 5. We have 5 external faculties. We have 5 internal ones. If I remember, we mentioned about al-his al-mushtarak. I think we mentioned last time. First, the common sense, and then you have al-khayal, and you have khayaliyah, a bit active, and then you have the hafizah, and then you have the wahmiyah. The wahmiyah is the estimative. Why you have to have estimative? The khayal, you see, when I picture this cup, this physical cup doesn't come to my head. There's a representation of it, right? So the representation is the holding of it. the image of it. And then in order to hold it in a certain way, meaning whether it is new or old, I think imagination. So that imagination is divided into two, rational or sensitive imagination. The sensitive imagination always bring about or produce, Proselatas mentioned, uh, arts, artistic words. You use that. Now, this is why Proselatas says, sorry, um, consciousness of God must also be in our sensitive imagination, meaning what we understand of Tawheed must be also shaping our sensitive imagination. The rational imagination is always, we use reason to arrive at the truth. Yes? So, give you an example. When Allah Ta'ala says, God is one, normally we fall to the rational imagination. God is one is like, God is like number one lah. But even that is wrong. Because according to Lataif al-Asrar li Ahli Raniri, quoting Sayyidina Ali says, if we were to think, ini rational imagination, if you were to think that God oneness, Tauhid Allah Ta'ala as like number one, you have committed syirik. Why? You have put him, his sifah, among numbers. Macam orang puan lah. If you compare him with another woman, kacau lah. It wouldn't work. Maknanya you can compare me with another. That's why. This is what Sayyidina Ali says. If you were to compare him among numbers, فَقَدْ أَدَّتَهُ, then you have regarded him belong to the numbers. That is syirik. And if you were to limit him at one, like, he's one of everything, like what people think of monism, meaning God is everywhere, then you make him into your own imagination. Your own imagination. That's why he is not rational imagine, nor he is sensitive imagination. Like someone were to say, I want to paint Tawheed Allah Ta'ala. You represent him in a form. That is wrong. That's why he says here, he is beyond. See? So the Tawheed too, it's quite unique in itself. So we must not in any way capture God in what we call the rational and the estimative imagination. But we must, as he said here, we are conscious. So conscious meaning, this is why it's very important to get a little from Ibn Arabi. Iyaka bitanzih wa iyaka bitashbih. Be careful not to make God so transcendent that he is beyond what you can understand. And don't make God too immanent like Tuhan ada jari. Macam jari manusia. And then you have tashbih. See? So this is the discussion today between Wahhabis and what have you, right? So this is why this is the implication of it, It is created disposition qadar and individual intention niyah to decide upon an action positively and negatively. I have mentioned what Proselatas mentioned here. I have mentioned the meaning of niyah in the book Al-Attas Psychology. It is created disposition qadar and individual intention to decide upon an action, amal. What it is this. You see, intention is not niyah. Unfortunately, it's been translated like that. Intention, properly speaking, the word is maksud, qasada. Because qasa means you hone in onto something. So maksud is what you intend. But niyah is not intention. Unfortunately, it's poor translation, Niyah, what Proselatas mentioned is really qadar, meaning what is intended for you. And this is why, and it has to do with something you work towards it. This is why I mentioned niyah is the arrival of meaning in the qalb and the arrival of the intellect to understand that. When that coalesce, that is niyyah. That is proper niyyah. Otherwise, it's just maksud. The difference. And that's what the book on makna tu explains it exactly. Fascinating, you know.
You
So,
give example.
okay,
Macam niat dan maksud.
niat dan maksud. You want to go to Hajj, okay? Your intention is this is maksud. You want to go on a certain date, on a certain year after you get everything, all right? So that is your maksud. Now, the proper niyyah is really that we all experience this. Once you arrive at Makkah, that maksud is no longer there. It's obliterated. You feel you are there. Why? Because the meaning has arrived at you. Sama dengan umrah. For the first time, most people who experiences umrah, when they arrive in Makkah, they see Kaabah, the maksud is gone. It's no longer intellectually conceptualized. Immediately, some of you burst into crying. Some of you just fixated before the Kaaba. And that's when the meaning arrives out. Because your maksud, you have arrived with your maksud. But the meaning now arrives so that you are, well, some people would describe it as you're transported to a different level of realization. I'm now standing in front of the Kaaba that was built by Ibrahim. You know, that's the background noise lah. It was circumambulated by the prophets and other prophets before that, you know, and the great Sahaba, you know, so you feel the weight of history. Now, this is the niyyah. The niyyah becomes when the meaning arrives and you intended it and suddenly it coalesces, boom. That is proper niyyah. That is proper niyyah.
Okay.
Pak Adib nak jadi engineer. Kan? You became an engineer. Tapi when do you feel you're an engineer? Not after you got a degree. It's when you start working, solving a problem. And that's when the meaning has arrived in you. That is why innamal a'malu bin niyat. And that is when at that level, your amal is measured by that niyat. That particular issue. It's not by what you intend.
Kalau maksud, maknanya dia
you plan for it.
Okay.
This is what Prof al-attas mentioned here.
Intention.
That's why he's mentioned here. See, niyat qadar. It is created disposition. Qadar. That's what Allah Ta'ala finally give it to you. You get it at that point. A lot of people don't realize that. The realization of that meaning, the measure of it, Allah Ta'ala gives to you that level. Like macam ni lah. We pray not the same level as Rasul Sallallahu pray. Different. He intended the same. Maksudnya, he wants to pray Dhuhr. He wants to pray Dhuhr. We want to pray Dhuhr. But when Allah Ta'ala measures the amal, the niyyah of Abu Bakr is definitely different with the niyyah of the Prophet. This is amazing. It's amazing, you see? To decide upon an action, positively or negatively. Alhamdulillah, you know, even you can niyyah to do something negatively. Yeah. Not giving somebody money, negatively. But that niyyah is good because sometimes it's very bad to give someone who is not trustworthy. So it is to submit, aslama, willingly, taw'an, and karhan, or unwillingly. There is contrariness in religion in which Islam is not considered to be constituent part of religion, such as isyan, rebellion, making a partner, rival, or an equal to God, his rule, shirk. Now, all other religions have this. Macam Isa is a partner, Maryam is a partner. Kalau ikut earlier works, you know, for Banu Israel, So what happened with the absence of Moses? They built something, you know. And according to Raniri in his book Tibyan fi Ma'rifatil Adyan, they even regard Uzair as the son of God. So they have this idea for the idea of oneness, Tauhid Allah Ta'ala is uniquely Islam. In India, of course, they believe in fact, they're proud of many gods and goddesses. See? They praise themselves after that, you know. So we don't have this shirk, we don't have this dahriya, deviant belief, and we don't have this aberration, ilhad. It is the heart and the mind being covered from the truth, resulting in unbelief, what ilhad is, or rejection of the truth, kufr. This contrariness in deen is really a symptom of the phenomena of human intervention, of revealed religion. This is why I remember when I think they divide religion into two: revealed and revealed but corrupted. You know, revealed but corrupted means Judaism, Christianity. Deen is a science and the art of governance. Siyasa. This is what I said. Other religions don't have this. Siyasa. Yeah. And it is also judicious administration of the concerns and resources of the community. Iqtisad. Deen in all these taken together except the contraries. It is belief, devotion, i'tiqad, and works, amal, including details of the sciences derived from it, such as jurisprudence, fiqh, theology, kalam, metaphysics, tasawwuf, philosophy, hikmah, and ethics, akhlaq. It is inseparable combination of external verification, Islam, internal verification, iman, and consciousness of God's presence, ihsan. This is the three fundamental. You know, Hadith Jibril. I think it's fascinating. I think this is the first time Prophet encapsulated the meaning of Islam to conclude with Hadith Jibril. And this is why it's fascinating for him to be able to do this, you know. So it is an inseparable combination of external verification, which is Islam, this the external verification, the internal verification, iman, and the consciousness of God, which is ihsan. This goes very well, Pak Adik, with your question, although you jump ahead, that the affirmation, the confirmation. This is it. The external is the confirmation, the affirmation is the internal, you see. So if we were to go back to the discussion about lafaz, ism, musamma, Prophet makes a mention here that there is a term. You see, Islam is a legal and also a lexical term, linguistic. What's the difference? It's a big difference. This is something about uniquely Islam. You have something which is lughawiyan, lexical, linguistic, you know, which everybody use. But it is human concoction. The lisan is the one that is not human concoction. This is lisanan Arabiyan ghayru dhi iwajin. And that's talked about the lisan, the tongue of the Arabs. And it refers to what Prophet is mentioning, the lisan meaning the language of the Quran, not the lugha Arabic. You get the difference? The lugha of the Arabic is the participation of Muslim, non-Muslim, you know, the poorly educated, talks the language. And that's why you need a discipline called lugha. But the lisan of the Quran. And that is why the Quran becomes the final measure for the language of Arabic.
Mm-hmm.
It's not poetry, although it is used to explain some meanings. Don't be mistaken. It is used only to explain some meanings of the old words, but that does not mean it defines the Arabic of the Quran. This is what Prophet has been trying to say. We must take the meaning of Allah, the meaning of Islam from the Quran. This is what I found quite fascinating with the book. And he tries to explain it, Dato Sri, in his discussion about the prophets, you know, Ibrahim, in fact, beginning with Noah, Ibrahim, and if you were to follow it with the stories of the Quran, a lot of it is basically the story of Moses. So the story of Moses is the people of the Hebrew people, a very strange people. I mean, well, now you can see how strange they are. The Quran describes them as superb, obstinate. They don't listen to their prophets. In fact, they disagree and they kill them. So this is quite a different. You have a nature of people. This nature we have among us today, even Muslims of different shades and colors. You see. So this is why the idea of taw'an, submitting willingly, it's not easy. And this is why the training of the qalb is something very important. And we must constantly doing it. And that's the purpose of religion. We must constantly assuage or sort of massage the qalb to become ever more willing to submit. See? And this is why fa'budullah hatta ya'tiyakal yaqeen. Fa'budullah. So it's difficult to translate the word, ibadat, because the word ibadat means like a servant, it also means to perform the services, the ibadat. But here, meaning to live as a proper Muslim, as Prophet describes here, hatta ya'tiyakal yaqeen, the Muslim scholars, the mufassirun says, one, it means until certainty arrives in you. Because let's be honest, some of us, certainty is not really lodged in the qalb. I give you an example of that. A lot of us, many of us, are commoners when it comes to engineering formula. So we just follow. Okay lah, pasang ni. But for engineers, they know very well there's some things you shouldn't do. You see? So the same thing with this. Submitting to God, the oneness. So we make assumption about God, as if because our conception of God falls under sensitive imagination and rational imagination. Some of us are so sensitive that God is someone or the being that will look after his or her emotion. Yeah. Some people think that God as a rational thing, or God is a scientist. Just like, for example, Newton says, when I enter my lab, I leave God behind the door. Because this is science now. God doesn't come into. Yeah.
I think the idea of secularism, yang buku Islam and secularism tu, probably in Muslim context we can appreciate it, but in in other religions, say for example, they have to be secular because the religion's not able to cope with that. Saya betul tak betul saya tak tahu lah, tapi ada orang bagi tahu some of people in many places in the world, before they commit something very bad, they pray to God first. Ya, ada orang kata macam-macam lah, sebelum dia pergi merompak tu dia semayang dulu. Dia make sure that rompak tu dia tak dibunuh, tak ditangkap semuanya. Dipermudahkan urusan. Supaya dia merompak tu, and then because God and the act of robbery itu is two separate thing.
Well, this is kalau in terms of theology, this is a discussion of iktisab. How do man has power over his action? Is he the master of his activity? So Ash'aris discuss this the question of iktisab, in that Allah Ta'ala has given you the power to do things, and it is really true. But Dato Sri, from our point of view, from the Muslim theology, this is where the niyyah is. If you belong to a different, if the person belongs to a different religion, then that might not be a sin to them. It's just a crime. See, in a secular world, a crime is not a sin. because it's a secular world.
Mm.
It is something, an activity that goes against the law and the conduct of morality of the state. That is a crime. It can be civil or it can be criminal. From the Muslim point of view, there's no such thing. A crime, civil or criminal, all of them are sin.
Mm. Mm.
That's why for us, really, langgar traffic light is a sin because you're against the, ulul amr. But we don't realize that. See, buang sampah is actually because really the Quran says, yani hadith, an-nadhafatu min al-iman. Cleanliness is part of your belief. No, but we litter like nobody's business.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a sin actually.
Mm.
Ah.
Dan konsep taubah in other religions, say for example, they just can get pardoned by going to
That's not taubah, Dato. That's apa?
Repented.
No. Confession. Yes.
Confession.
Confession. Repentance is different from confession.
Mm.
Yeah.
Confess
what they call confession, we call muhasabah.
Muhasabah. Okay.
We do it ourselves. They have to confess before a priest. We don't have to. We confess to ourselves before Allah Ta'ala because وَهُوَ أَقْرَبُ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. Allah is closer to you than your jugular vein.
Mm.
So kita muhasabah is an act of ibadah actually. It's a lower form of ibadah. You see?
Mm.
For them, it's not ibadah. It's a confession of a sin.
Mm.
And their sin is only what is they understood before God.
Mm.
Crime is not sin.
Mm.
That's why the mafia live very well in it for a long time.
And they go to church. Very true. Yeah. So I just want to, because we don't have much time. Professor Nakib sebut tentang the study Quran tu. So there's a lot of people asking what, on top of changing the word Islam to submission and Allah with God, what else that we should be concerned about?
I think these are the two main concerns.
Mm.
Yeah, even I remember before Prof. al-attas, long before Prof. al-attas raised this issue, when I was in the States, that's I when the message, the translation of the Quran by Muhammad Asad was first published, I managed to get a copy of Muhammad Asad. Yeah, I read that part. I also found it very strange. Why is the name Islam not there? But verily, the religion before God is submission. I found that very strange. So I'm glad that Professor al-attas eventually brought this issue up, and this is why he wants to explain that the name Islam and the name Allah, they are not historically developed. Meaning, the revelation of Islam is finally like what Prophet al-attas mentioned about earlier prophets and their followers as Muslims anticipate. My memory doesn't serve me very well today. Hilmi, do you remember about the hadith of the Prophet that he says that he's like the building and then he's the last brick and he's going to complete that building? Anybody remembers as the last brick? So he is like that. The building is not finished unless the final brick is put in place. And that's what Prophet al-attas is trying to remind us, the uniqueness of the Prophet. And this is why other prophets also, the idea of the covenant with earlier prophets. I remember reading the tafsir, and Prophet al-attas mentioned it here. If we can go back a few pages, that needed page 22. وَإِذْ أَخَذَ مِنْ نَبِيِّينَ مِيثَاقَهُمْ وَمِنْكَ وَمِنْ نُوحٍ وَإِبْرَاهِيمَ وَمُوسَى وَعِيسَى ابن Maryam وَأَخَذْنَا مِنْهُمْ مِيثَاقًا غَلِيظًا. And when we took from the prophets their covenant, and it's mentioned the prophet first. And then after that, in order, Nuh, Ibrahim, Musa, Isa. The Mufassirun says because the prophet was the first prophet ever created by Allah Ta'ala. Then he took it with other prophets. That's why they says Musaddiqan lima bayna yada wa mubashiran bi rasulin ya'ti min ba'di ismuhu Ahmad. This is referring to Isa alayhi salam. I am here to confirm what is between what you have in your hands and to give you glad tidings of a prophet coming after me. I don't know the surah of it, you know. Wa mubashiram bi rasulin ya'ti min ba'di ismuhu Ahmad. I think begin ya ayyuhalladzina amanu hal adullukum ala tijaratin tunjikum min adzabin alim, something like that. That's the verse, but so far, yeah. So that's clear in the Quran. You see, now this is what I want to say. Remember, we don't take this in our sensitive imagination about the prophets. In how is it that Isa can say this in the Quran? That goes back to the point that goes back to the mithaq of Bani Adam. They all at that point, you see, they have seen, because the prophets, they are given ability to see something beyond our level. They are the so-called imagination of a higher level. They're not our level. As I said last time, like Rasul Sallallahu, Jibreel came, Fadi Jibreel, you know, he came in the form of a man. Then he asked Omar, you know, do you know who this man is? And they said, you know, Allah wa Rasul alam. But the Prophet says to him, no, that's Jibreel coming to teach you your religion. That's why Prophet has mentioned it here. But earlier prophets, like Ibrahim alayhi salam, he couldn't tell that these are angels that visited him until the wife brought out the food. And they say, we are not from those who eat. Then suddenly he realized. So even prophets have different levels of imagination. Not imagination, but the faculty of spiritual cognition. You know? And this is why for some of us, ladies and gentlemen, you know, in the Christian tradition, they believe in the different chapters of their Bible, Matthew, Luke, whatever, and they saw they're all inspired, and that they shouldn't be. In some degree, we can agree with that. What I mean by that is this: the inspiration that we get from our ulama, some of them, this is look, can hit on the truth, just like you scientists. When you see the culmination of some behavior in nature, you write a formula. That's it. It is carved in stone, like the law of gravity of Newton. Tak boleh ubah. Come Einstein, special theory and general theory relativity. Habis. But that's a different set of formula. Remember? The same thing with the realities that the prophets can see. This is what Prophet is saying. If we can admit people are of different degrees of intelligence, can we intelligence, akal? Can we admit people of different degrees of imagination? Not imagination yang buat khat, buat no. This is the cognitive, spiritual cognition. But we have seen it in the case of, you know, Ibrahim and Rasul Sallallahu. In fact, Musa pun, you know, he wants to see Allah jahratan, and then Allah Taala, look at the mountain. If you see it standing, yeah, perhaps, and the mountain, boom, Musa gone. Because that's the level of Musa. That's the level of Musa. The prophets never asked Allah Taala of that. His level is higher. And this is why the function of the qalb is very important. We tend to neglect it, you know. But unfortunately, now it's being also misdirected in the sense that this qalb is only, you know, tasawwuf, you know, all of these things. Not really that. It's not really that. That's why when you read the proper works of the Sufis, they don't talk about that. They really don't talk about that so much, you know. It's more of the purity of the whole thing, the spirit, ruh, the qalb, the akal, and the nafs.
So how can we take Abrahamic tradition into perspective? The correct way. But this is, say for example, page 28 ni kan? 29, 28, 29 ni. It was illustrated in such a way that we have to understand the history, the background, which is illustrated in Quran.
The Abrahamic tradition. First, there is no such thing as Abrahamic religion. Maka na Ibrahim Yahudiyan atau Nasraniyan. Walakinna Hanifan Musliman. Betul? So there is no Abrahamic religion. but there is Abrahamic Millah. And that Millah, Prophet Sallallahu said, Hanifan Musliman. Now, that Musliman is not Islam proper, but more submitting to the true God, but not Islam as complete. See? So that's what we should take. And we shouldn't talk about Abrahamic faith. No, because Ibrahim doesn't believe in Judaism. Ibrahim was not a Jew, nor was he a Christian. So that's the right thing to take from here. It's a good question, yeah. We shouldn't talk about Abrahamic faiths. He doesn't say it's Millah. Millah. And Millah is not faith. If you want to know Millah, you must read. No, the closest to us, because Ibrahim alayhi salam is so far distant behind. If you want to read about what Millah is all about, read the story of the living dynamics of the Romans during their heyday, because that is what they call paganism. The opposite of, because Ibrahim and the earlier prophets was asking people to please do not believe in this, worshipping these idols. Because that's a millah of the people. So he's trying to bring out another millah, you see. And this is why the people of Ibrahim know, all this is. Are you going to ask us to not believe in what our forefathers have taught us? They found it so new, so revolutionary, because he is bringing them to no temple, no idol, no worship of priest, but just to follow him. He's not even asking to submit to him. That's the condition. That is another uniqueness, the nature of the prophets and the Anbiya in the past. They never asked them to be treated as the priests of their religion. That's the problem. If you watch, The Passion of Christ, Mel Gibson, if you want to watch something now. That's how the Jewish rabbis felt against Isa. As if he was competing for their authority. He was not, you see. And that's why the way, according to the history, as it is mentioned, the rabbis went to Pontius Pilatus and said, look, this man is trying to claim another kingdom, and this kingdom is in competition with the kingdom of Rome. So this is treason, and that's why he was caught. It was a camouflage for the fact that, they cannot get rid of him. So on the day of Passover, according to the Christian tradition, the Roman governor of Jerusalem has this privilege of granting pardon to any of the criminal. So they brought a robber, I think, and next to so-called Jesus. So which one do you want to set free? And they freed the man, not the so-called Jesus, and that's why he was crucified. That's the story, how it goes.
Why Judo-Christian is normally
Put together. Because the time frame is in the Roman Empire. That's fascinating. Isa is under the Roman, and the Jews were under the Roman rule. Palestine was them under the Roman rule. That's why it was Palestine.
Not because of they are revealed religion.
They are revealed but corrupted. But why they become so intertwined? This is very fascinating, Dato. That's one of the things that we said in the book Bangsa, Kebangsaan dan Patriotism. One of the elements Prof. al-attas was mentioning that drive into a unity, a sense of oneness of a nation, is history and religion. What happens to Christianity and Judaism? They share the same history. The history has the same location, Palestine. The same history goes with Judaism, religion. Because from Judaism, they have an offshoot called Christianity. This is why Ibrahim, mashallah, the beauty, he brought Hajar out. That's why Islam was Islam developed in Makkah. Otherwise, wow, we have a big problem. You see? So this is why they're so intertwined. So there is this element of unity among them, and this is why, if I'm not mistaken, I'm sorry if this statement may sound political, but the people in Sabah and Sarawak says that for them Christianity is close to Israel. In actual fact, it is not. It's not Israel per se, because it has nothing to do with the state. Religion has nothing to do with the state, as far as Christianity is concerned, right? Religion has to do with God. If you need to follow their own formula, but now they say they are closer to Israel. No, they should be closer to the religious part of Israel, the history of the Hebrews, and this Isa, and that has to do with Ibrahim, that has to do with Moses, and that has to do with the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. And that would be more fascinating way of looking at it, isn't it?
Yeah. So Israel received, the modern Israel received support from Christianity because of the Judeo-Christianity background.
Yes, exactly, because of Judeo-Christianity background.
Okay.
But
Question.
there is a plot political and yeah.
Sorry,
long way before manusia insan ini Allah cipta. Boleh begitu kan? That's our understanding. And kalau kita tengok kepada siapa Allah tujukan ayat ini kan, I think maybe kita nak kena fikir sikit. Kalau kita tengok related to ayat Al-Imran 191, Rabbana ma khalaqta hadha batila. Tuhanku, semua yang engkau ciptakan ini tidak sia-sia. Meaning that manusia and semua makhluk. Dan very interesting also, inni ja'ilun fil ardi khalifah. Sungguhnya aku, ini Allah, hendak menjadikan khalifah di muka bumi. Meaning that to all human beings. What about yang kufar? Today people don't like panggil dia kafir. Okay. And then bagi kita senang because kita percaya perjanjian ini, janji ini semua tu daripada zalikal kitabul la raiba fihi hudal lil muttaqin. Tanpa ragu-ragu. What about them? Yang kafir. Dia tidak ada hidayah. Dia tak percaya even ayat-ayat ni. Kita percaya because we are going to be a witness nanti sebab semua Allah dah sebut ni dalam Quran. Dan kita maknanya all these issues dia kembali kepada key-nya adalah iman.
Exactly. Yeah.
So how going to answer to the kafir? But they don't believe at all. Sedangkan ayat ini ditujukan oleh Allah tu, whenever you sebagai khalifah fil ard ni tak kira Islam tak sah pada awal. Dan dia dijadikan kebetulan lahir dalam keluarga yang bukan Islam. Ada yang dapat hidayah, alhamdulillah. Tapi dia mati dalam keadaan gitu. Macam mana ini berlaku? And how to convince them mana kena masuk Islam.
Dato, so you have that book just now, Al-Attas Psychology. Where is it? Yeah, this question was asked many times, but Prof. al-Attas has answered it in the book, The Meaning and Experience of Happiness in Islam. And if I can find it here, because I mentioned it here, referring to that, Dato, what are the positions of non-Muslim? Generally speaking, we have to look at in the book Umdatul Salik by Ahmad Naqib al-Misri, not Naqib al-Attas. Ahmad Naqib al-Misri, writing in the 14th century, Shafi'i, Sufi, Shafi'i jurist, yani faqih, and it's a very good book. The book is translated into English by Nohamin Keller, and he talks about this. The people between two prophets, meaning generally there are cases people who belong under one prophet, like Isa, Musa, Ibrahim, Noah. Then amongst them, those who follow and those who do not follow. Because those who do not follow, what are their responsibilities? We can only ask them to be civil, meaning ethical and moral. The same thing with earlier prophets also. But the people who are between two prophets, they are not going to be asked based on the earlier or the later, unless they have accepted either the earlier or the later. For example, a lot of people will say that those who follow Musa and those who follow Isa are the ones that are saved. But those they are under the domains of the Roman Empire, they may have heard of Isa but they do not know Isa properly, because he was caught and then according to the stories, and then there was a absences in history. And they were far from the stories of Moses, you see, but they were under the Roman Empire. So what would be their fate? And this is why in the Quran it is mentioned, the verse. There are 3 places. In fact, I was reading it this morning. If I can find it, somebody can find it. There are 3 places. But I remember the verse. Innal ladhina amanu wal ladhina hadu wan nasara was-sabiina man amana billahi wal yawmil akhir man amila salihan la khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. This is one verse. I think it's in Baqarah. Another verse is in Ma'idah. I forgot. The other verse, I think, what is it that I was reading to the Hajj or something? It mentions about wal majus, and it says yufassilu bainahum yawm al-qiyamah, meaning Allah Ta'ala will decide them individually. See? So let's put it this way, Dato. We are not the ones to say whether they go to heaven or hell. We just say, according to the Quran, it is up to Allah Ta'ala to decide. And Prof. al-Attas gives a very consolatory explanation. Just like we Muslims, among us, there will those who will not be saved on the day of judgment. In the same way, there are those who belong to other religions, but they may not believe in the conception of God as their culture and civilization believes, and they practice in a way that is more kind, something like to the ethical and morality that is defined by Islam. Maybe Allah Ta'ala will save them on the day of judgment. That would be our position, because this is what the meaning of the verses. And I checked, it is not among the mansukh. It's not being abrogated. The verses, the 3 of them. The only problem is that some among us today says that this only refers to the people of Moses. But there are very few people who immediately follow Moses of the time. There are very few people who follow Isa of the time. The same thing with Ibrahim, Saleh, Yaqub, everyone. That's what Prophet mentioned here. That's why they become a millah. And they are very tribal, meaning and they're very disparate, meaning here and there. They're not one united body of believers like we do now today. So I don't know if you can check the verses, but that's what it is. In fact, I checked Kashaf Zamakhshari. Inna ladhina amanu wal ladhina hadu. Why is it the believers mentioned and the Jews, and then wa nasara wa sabiina mentioned? Zamakhshari was saying this refers to the munafiqun, because they may change their belief after that. Sebab tu they're not munafiqun. Yeah, yu'minuna ala al-harfin. They are the people who believe on an edge. Sometimes when it is good for them, they believe. Many of us are like that today. When it is advantageous for us, we believe this way. When it's disadvantageous, we believe that way. We are all many like that. But that's what. So this is what Zamakhshari was saying. Why the believers I mentioned, it refers to the munafiqun, those who are not perfected in their belief. There's some element of corruption in their belief. There's hypocrisy. And then there's the Jews. So among them who believe in God and who does good deeds, they have no worry. La khawfun alayhim wa lahum yahzanun. And this is a very fascinating verse, Yeah.
Can I? Okay, we are now in the state of war in Palestine, and we have to understand the situation. And as far as we are concerned, I think many of us trying to argue with pro-Zionists using our perspective, using Quran, using Islamic worldview. But they are trying very best. I've seen yesterday videos that the rabbis are also not supporting.
Yeah.
This is politics. This is
Yeah. Rabbis don't believe in the Zionist state, Dato. They believe in the Messiah to come, and that is Jesus, who is part of the Jewish tradition. Isa, He is a Jew. He's from the Pharisees. Yeah. So that is why, by the way, the book is here. Let me read. It says, al-attas explained that just as the natural world submits to God's will, sunatullah, where motion, rest, growth, generation, decay, and corruption all fit a pattern created and set in the proper place, so there is a natural tendency of men to serve and worship God, fitrah. There is also referred in the deen a connotation of customs, habits, and disposition, referring to there are some people who may not belong to Islam, but they have habits, disposition that is akin to Islam, which reflects in what the Arabic says fitrah. Although deen, al-attas observes, is used to denote religions other than Islam, other religions that it submits that the submission according to Islam is sincere and total submission to God's will, and this is enacted willingly as absolute obedience to the law revealed by him. He also draws a clear distinction of the act of willing taw'an and unwilling submission karhan. This is the concluding. Those who act in conformity with that act of willing submission to the one God, their practices are not similar to the practices of their culturally inherited or tradition-based religions, of their forefathers, of their community, although they remain culturally so. And so because of that, their salvation in the hereafter is in the decision of Allah Ta'ala. Therefore, Islam is not a religion that does not dismiss the possibility of salvation of others in communities other than Islam. Because some of them other this disposition and acts which is akin to itulah the ethical, the morality. فَأَلْهَمَهَا فُجُورَهَا وَتَقْوَاهَا. So if we can agree with them and they follow us, you know, we can agree with that. And inshallah, Allah Ta'ala, you know, that's the best we can do. But because it is not for us to say, you know, you're damned to hell. Now, the category as far as kafir is concerned, this category gets very sensitive, Dato. The problem is they don't understand Arabic. Because kafir means a person who conceals the truth. That is why sometimes to refer to them as non-believer is a little bit more softer, you know. But kafir means people who have seen the truth and disregard and keeps on purveying something which is other than the truth. And that is a kafir. So the higher ones or more intensified one is kafir harbi, the one that we can fight. But not all kafir can be fought after because we need to win their heart. That's the problem with some of us. You know, sometimes we have this idea, kafir and this enemy. No, kafir is not an enemy. No, it's not an enemy because this is a matter of belief, and matter of belief is a matter of the heart. So we do not know their hearts. Simple as that. But as far as a category mentioned by the Quran, that's what it is. What it means is that they conceal the truth of the one God. They conceal the truth of the messengers and the prophets. If they are like that, then we use the term kafir. What's wrong with that? But because they don't know, and this is why it's important to study religions to understand. Yeah.
It's special, but we are very, very special one. Because kita ni diberi tanggungjawab untuk menjadi witness, saksi nanti. It's not only Jew ke apa. Mana ya, I mean sebelum sama ada Samud ke yang terhaka ni zaman Nuh apa semua gitu gini yang tak percaya kepada Allah SWT dan syariatnya itu. Esok bila ditanya dan we bersama Nabi Muhammad sebagai witness. Okay? Betul oleh Allah SWT. Maknanya betul. So from where we know all this thing, you know, sebagai peranan sebagai saksi itu, it told us dalam Quran disebutkan. Sebab itu, the key of all this issue adalah percaya kepada kitab. Ini sebab membaca Quran, memahaminya, menyebar Quran itu is very important. Sekurang-kurangnya kita menjalankan tanggungjawab. Jadi ada orang tanya, how do we know? Quran said that. Kan? Di mana tanggungjawab kita sebagai umat Muhammad ni, Masya Allah.
Terima kasih, Dato. That's a good point. This is why, remember this formula in the Quran, La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha. Allah Ta'ala will not ask or not will hold accountable against you that which is beyond your capacity to carry out. Sometimes we ask something of curiosity. That is fine. But sometimes, when you ask something, it becomes a burden on you because that you know. So once you know, sometimes you have to act upon it. So this is the thing. Sometimes human being, we ask things that out of curiosity, but that's why better not to know something. Allah Ta'ala will not ask you beyond it. But as Dato clearly says, yeah, we must know more about the history of our prophets in the past. Because some of us, we have very corrupted history of our own Islam. This is what Prof is trying to do, actually. I mean, he's trying to invite us to reinvigorate our Islam, not just some saying here and there, but you must now actually go dive deeper into more the history of our prophets and let them be closer to our consciousness.
That's why dalam kes yang apabila Gaza, Palestin been invaded by this Zionist zalim kejam, kita tak boleh duduk diam sebab berlaku depan mata kita. We're going to be witness also. Kalau tak buat sesuatu, and then kita terima juga tanggungjawab itu. Maknanya it's a very, very orang kata apa, the real thing happen now. Mau tak mau sekarang kita terlibat. I think for example, everybody knows lah, by using the algorithm now, if you post you punya Facebook ke apa, TikTok, tengok sebut Zionis apa semua tu, automatic dia tak respon. I post normally dapat like 100, 200, no, 2, 3 ya. Meaning that it's real war. Meaning that what are we going to do now? Kan? Jadi maknanya kita kena ambil advantage lah daripada apa yang nak masuk syurga ni. It's not that easy also.
I have this situation. I have this situation. If you read the interpretation of Quran, tafsir yang especially in English, there are two school of thought. One, to get rid of anything to do with external influences. Israeliyat, say for example, you still remember Abdullah Yusuf Ali translation, and there was another review, and they took out all Israeliyats. The other one is to please the academic traditions by diluting Islam, by not mentioning Islam. The words Islam is not there. Then the words of God, Allah is replaced by God's. So I think this is the situation. I'm not sure about tafsir in Arabic or in other languages, but in English, because
this is interesting. But this is why translation is not to be regarded as tafsir. So it is okay for you to read a certain translation, either by Yusuf Ali, Muhammad Pitwa, T.B. Irving. There's also Muhammad Asad. And if you like to read the one by the Study Quran, and there's a new one I forgot by Ahmad Zaki, I forgot the name of the book. He was working with it in Chicago. So translation is just translation, that it's okay. It's just that we must be very particular about when the translation has to deal with something very key and technical in terms of our religion. In the tafsir tradition, there's also a movement try to get rid of the Israeli. I remember have the tafsir Kathir, and somebody tried to do sort of a purging some of the Israeliyat. This has because to do with it has to do with some of the narratives in the concerning some stories or whatever that's mentioned in the tafsir. It's being it's being narrated by people who are of Jewish background. They became Muslim, but because of that, their narration becomes suspect. For example, if you take Ibn Kathir, there are many in it that contains narration by people of Jewish descent who became Muslim. But later, they tried to get rid of some of this. The same thing dalam buku. I think in Tabari, the same thing also. They try to get rid of these things. But it's good for awam, but for scholars, they need to see both. For scholars, they need to see both, because that is our responsibility. We have to see how the narration goes and then correct it as we go along. And that's what Ibn Khaldun was saying about the duties of a historian, because early historians among the Muslims do exaggerate some parts. Yeah. And then Ibn Khaldun says, no, it's just not possible to have this many army in such a small place, to have a war, and things like that. So you must use a bit of reasoning. So I think that's the same thing that is being done by, alhamdulillah, we have scholars who are keen in this. But one thing that what Prof. al-Attas is trying to do is trying to, create an awareness that some technical terms we must be very careful when we translate. But for example, myself, when I want to look at the translation of the Quran, I still use Abdullah Yusuf Ali, the first one. I don't use the Abdullah Yusuf Ali by Amanda publication that was heavily, as they say, expurgated, taken out many things. Because I, as a historian in this part, I want to see what Abdullah Yusuf Ali understand of some of these things. And, when you reach a certain level, you do see some of the inconsistencies. And our ulama has been very quick in pointing this out. Cuma, the thing is this, unfortunately, many of us who are educated, our language of science is English. Third, and our ulama who are learned in this matter, they're either very efficient in Arabic and very good in Malay. So the two of you are not talking. The two of you are not talking. But for myself, for example, take myself as a real life example. I have Arabic facility, I have Persian, I have the languages of the Muslim scholarship. I can check these things. It's easy for me. It's so easy for me that I know these things. And even some of my students will say, when I read something in Arabic, it's even clearer than they understood it. Because I can see a different light, I can interpret something differently. Because they do not have the facility of a wider meaning as I have. Because I have so many other languages that can help me. So this is the other thing. This is why we are facing this problem. People who come back from India, Pakistan, learning, their language is Malay, Urdu, Arabic, Persian. How are they going to talk to you who are educated Malays who came from England, US, Japan, Germany, Australia? Yeah. You don't get the level of intellectualism at the same path. That's what is happening now. See?
Other question, please. We have another 10 minutes.
Where's your phone, Tani? Dato was pointing me the hadith about the brick. Yeah. Yeah, this is the hadith. Rasulullah SAW said, my similitude in comparison with other prophets before me is that of a man who has built a house nicely and beautifully, except for a place of one brick in a corner. So the people go about it and wonder at its beauty, but say, would that this brick be put in its place? So I am that brick, and I am the last of the prophets. حدثنا قتيبة بن سعيد حدثنا إسماعيل بن جعفر عن عبد الله بن دينار عن أبي صالح عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال إن مثلي ومثل الأنبياء قبلي كمثل رجل بنى بيتا فأحسنه فأجمله إلا موضع لبنة إلا موضع لبنة من زاوية فجعل الناس يطوفون به ويعجبون له ويقولون هلا وضعت هذه اللبن قال فأنا اللبن وأنا حاتم النبي. The building is incomplete until I complete it.
But it said there is only one brick.
Just one brick. Yeah.
So it means that millah is
the small bricks are by other prophets.
Okay.
That's at the millah, So the the whole thing just complete. Yeah. Ah,
Okay, Prof, earlier you were discussing about tau'an
Tau'an
wa
wa
karhan
karhan.
tadi kan, maknanya taat dan juga
Dikrah.
secara dikrah,
Kerahan.
karahan, karahan. Recall that wahadainahu najdain dalam surah Al-Balad,
Wahadainahu
dan
najdain.
diberikan pada manusia itu dua jalan lah, betul atau salah. Does it related ataupun something that we can relate
No,
to?
that refers to fa'alhamaha fujuraha wa taqwaha. Yeah, because that's the issue of the choice. Karhan has nothing to do with choice. Karhan has to do with you like it or not, you submit. That refers to the world of the jamadat, the world of nabatat, and the world of haywanat. The mineral, the vegetal, and the animals. The one that can do karhan are those. The one that do tau'an are the human beings. Sebab itu the Quran says, "Wallahu aslama man fis samawati wal ard." Man fis samawati wal ard. Yeah, because in the heavens you don't have things or makhluk that has reason. Yeah. Fascinating, you know. Ta'ah. Yeah. Ta'an is from ta'ah. Yes, sorry.
One question. There has been Bangi cases to the talk by Professor Najib al-Attas. He mentioned that during Isra Mi'raj, you know, Allah communicated with Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Yeah.
Starting from the qalb
Yeah.
to akal and to the ear.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the total opposite from us human beings, right?
I was
we
discussing
we
that.
always
Yeah.
refer to the senses first, and
Yes,
then
exactly.
we go to our akal, and then qalb. Can you enlighten us about this? Thank
I
you.
was just saying about it, about some artists they are the so-called inspired. Yeah. They just pick a pen and start painting. Inspired. See? This also has to do with the verse in the Quran, وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَى إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَى. The mechanism, how it works, the dynamics of prophetic communication is in such that the revelation is deposited in the qalb. Now, the qalb is a very important engine, so to speak, in the human composition of ruh, qalb, akal, and nafs. So the qalb is for the prophets, and all prophets, they are far more active than akal. Not to say that they are akal deficient, because one of the sifat of the prophet is, siddiq, fatana, tabligh, and amana. See, so they are of high intelligence, but the functioning of the prophetic cult is far more superior than what we regard as is superior in terms of intelligence. So the way it does that, Rasulullah was saying, goes to the cult first, then it works the intellect, and that working of the intellect is shaped, so-called colored. That is why wama yantiqu anil hawa. Whatever he spoke is from revelation, because his akal is shaped by his cult. For us, the cult is so suppressed that the intellect tells the akal, the cult. And then the intellect pula, for us, is being suppressed by the nafs. And that is why we work, as you said, from the senses all the way inside. But to go inside to look up, mati. Because the akal is so strongly attracted by the nafs. This is why Rasulullah was talking, and our great Muslim thinkers were talking about the ruh or the qalb, the akal, the highest one must control nafsul haywani. Many of us, the nafsul haywani control nafsul natiqa. See? So he receives revelation, and then it goes through the intellect, it goes to the nafs, and then it goes to the mahsusa. That is why it is reported, he says, as if I hear a bell. There's no bell. Like now, I suffer from tinnitus. You hear ringing in the ear. That doesn't mean I get revelation. I just have tinnitus. How many of you have this problem ringing in the ear? If you have ringing in the ear, you should go and check your ear, because you may have problems with hearing. I'm not joking. Go and see. Yeah, so that's us. But the prophetic revelation is different. That's how he experiences. That's why he says, "Arinal ashya kama hiya." Let me see things as they really are. Hakikat dia nampak, we don't. That's why we shouldn't make that doa, because it's quite arrogant for us to say that. It's not for us, you know. The thing that we can ask, Rabbana arinal haqqa haqqan warzuqna ittiba'ah wa arinal batila batilan warzuqna ijtinabah. Itu, that's what we can ask. Kebenaran, but not arinal asya' kama hiya. It's beyond our wus'ah, you know.
Okay, kita ada ada 2-3 minit lagi. Kita dah 2 jam ni. Alhamdulillah kita masih segar. Cuma saya nak maklumkan tentang pertemuan akan datang ni. Saya cadangkan 25 November. Prof.
Okay, I'm okay.
25th November. Dan 16 Disember. Saya fikir towards the end of December tu dah ramai orang cuti.
Oh.
16 Disember. Kami pun ada adik isteri saya kahwin di Kedah, jadi kena pergi Kedah. 25 November dan 16 Disember, ya, insya-Allah. Jadi saya mengucapkan terima kasih kepada semua. Saya fikir kita kena ada last session. Buku ni baru muka surat 28 ke
30, that's the main core Islam.
Ya, saya
After
fikir
this, I think we want to talk about the name Allah.
the name Allah. Saya fikir perkara ni dulu kita belajar tauhid masa kita di sekolah dulu mungkin terlampau on the surface. Dan kita pun rasa kita dah tahu tentang Allah tu. Selepas tu tak banyak bincanglah tentang perkara yang dianggap sebagai basic ni Pak Din. Dah reti, takkan nak cerita tentang Allah lagi dah. Ya. Jadi kita punya assumption kita tahu tentang perkara ni. Sedangkan kalau kita tengok balik perkembangan yang berlaku ni, nampaknya people are trading the name of Allah with others. And putting Islam at the level where we shouldn't be submit to. So saya mengucapkan terima kasih kepada semua, terutamanya mereka yang hadir pada hari ini. Saya minta maaf ramai yang minta hadir. Tapi rumah saya ni kecil lah, setakat ni dia mampu. Itu pun bersesak-sesak panas. Dah ada 2 aircon pun rasa panas lagi. Jadi kepada mereka yang mengikuti kita dari jauh, terima kasih kerana dapat bersama-sama majlis kita ni. Mudah-mudahan ini menjadi satu perkara yang memanjangkan amal kita. Kita akan record ni, kita akan jadikan dalam bentuk video dalam YouTube dan minta dipanjangkan supaya dapat manfaat yang lain. Dan saya cadangkan kepada Prof. Zaini kita ada last session lah dalam buku ni. Okay. Ya, dan mungkin session yang akan datang ni selain daripada membicarakan tentang Allah, mungkin persoalan-persoalan yang penting yang dibincangkan. Walaupun ada yang tulis kat saya dia dah baca banyak kali, tapi dia rasa majlis kita ni membantu untuk membolehkan mereka lebih faham. Perkara yang basic lah, ni kita pasal Islam. Terima kasih semua. Lepas ni kita ada sikit jamuan jemput. Wallahu a'lam bishawab. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.